Okay, next up, security posture. That's maintaining a consistent approach. So what does that mean? It means having a great big guard standing at the front of our data center, right? Not letting anybody in unless they have the proper credentials. No, seriously. It means having a few things: an initial baseline configuration so that we understand where we are currently, or maybe where we were in the beginning of a pristine environment, and then where things are going once we make patches, changes, tweaks, and so forth. It means continuous security monitoring so that we continuously are aware of what's happening in our environment. It's not a one and done type of thing. And then remediation. So if things are wrong or we do identify gaps, how do we address them? So an initial baseline configuration. That amounts to taking a snapshot of either the current environment, as I said, or a newly installed pristine environment. All right, so why do we do that? Well, we need to understand what is normal so that we can then identify what's not normal, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, right? So it shows deviation from what is expected. It also shows the effects of changes. Now, the changes could be good or bad. We could install a security patch, and that could make things more secure. It could improve performance. Or conversely, we could install a patch, or we could install some type of tweak, and all of a sudden performance tanks and goes through the floorboard. Or it leaves us open to security vulnerabilities. It really just depends, but we won't know that unless we understand what is normal. And then continuous security monitoring. Well, installing a patch or turning on a firewall, that's not enough. I mean, I think everyone understands that. It's not a one and done. We have security in and of itself is a constantly evolving technology. It's a constantly evolving field. There are new threats emerging daily. And then also we have hundreds of 0 days, as we talked about previously. There are 0-day vulnerabilities that are discovered every day or every, couple times a week, couple times a month. But there are also organizations, whether they be hackers or even governments, that hoard literally hundreds of 0-day vulnerabilities. So they have these things in their back pocket or their tool bag or whatever you want to call it in case they ever need to use them. All right. So there are lots of vulnerabilities out there that we don't know about. So we can't, as a company or as a security professional, expect to issue one patch or to set up our perimeter defense once and then walk away. We have to continuously monitor those things for anomalies, for vulnerabilities, for penetration testing purposes, and so forth. All right, and then also on top of that, hackers are constantly learning new techniques, right? They're going to learn from each other. They're going to always kind of push the envelope. I mean, that's kind of what a hacker does innately, is just see if it can be done. Some hackers do things for malicious intent, obviously. Others they climb the mountain just to see if they can, right? To see what's on the other side. So they're always going to be poking and prodding and seeing what they can get into. Whether it's criminal intent or not, it's really irrelevant, right? From a security perspective, from our perspective, we need to make sure our perimeter is tight and our defenses are strong. And then on the remediation front, we need to understand, of course, where we're at, where we're going, the effective changes, and so forth. But then once we do encounter something that's an anomaly or some type of issue, or we identify a gap in our existing security posture and our existing security protocols, we must have a plan in place to address that breach or that gap when it occurs. All right. Plans must be made in advance. If we think that we're going to be able to do this under the gun when we got a crisis, in full out crisis mode, it's not going to happen. We have to have these things in place ahead of time so that everybody knows where they need to go, what they need to do, who needs to be contacted, phone trees, and so forth. We need to understand what ports to shut down, what processes to put in place, what perimeter defense things perhaps need to be spun up. Right? A lot of things are going to need to happen kind of in tandem and in parallel, and it's not the time to try to figure out what you're doing when you're in the middle of the crisis, right? There's no time to vet the process and identify gaps. So we have to have these things in place ahead of time. And then also policies in place to react depending upon the type of alert, because as we know, we have things that are mild, things that are kind of more or less kind of in the middle, and then we have things that are severe or critical. So that things that are maybe just annoying to our business, things that may stop us temporarily, and things that could literally shut us down or put us out of business. So we have to make sure we have a remediation policy that's appropriate and the response is appropriate for the threat that's encountered. Okay, so along those lines, if we talk about policies and timelines to remediate, we need to do so depending upon the severity. So if we have a minor threat, right, there's no immediate threat in and of itself. It can be addressed during a normal patch or upgrade cycle. If it happens after hours, perhaps we might get to it tomorrow during the next business day, right? It's a minor. Then we have serious, means the threat exists, but the likelihood of implementation is low. So the threat might exist that there's a web vulnerability, as an example. But if none of our servers are actually serving up web pages, well, yes, we need to make sure we install this patch just so we're up to date. But we don't necessarily have anything in our environment that's going to be exploited. So the likelihood might be low. And then we have critical, where the threat exists and the likelihood of success or a successful attack, I should say, is high. So those things must be addressed immediately because, again, we have to prioritize. In business and in IT, we have so many things happening all the time, different projects, different demands on our resources. We have to prioritize and triage, if you will, to understand where to apply our resources first so that we address the most critical things first.